Okay, welcome back to the Caribou Media Outdoors podcast. With me this afternoon is Evan Williams from Hoyt Archery. Welcome.
How's it going, sir?
Good. This is great. I'm glad we were able to work this out. I appreciate your time.
No, absolutely. Sorry about last week. We tried to get this done, and
Oh, no, that's fine.
just between shows and events and everything going on here, it was just absolutely crazy. So
Yeah,
glad we could get rescheduled.
show season is a rocking time, right?
It is 100%.
Pulled in multiple
So,
directions. Yeah.
yep.
Yeah, I have to start making a point of going down to some of the shows because I hear the Western Hunt Expo is like one not to be missed, and
Yeah, for sure.
yeah,
Yeah, the Western Hunt, really, really good. Great Americans, really, really good. Super long. There's another one that started last year in Denver called the Mile High Hunt Expo.
okay,
That one's starting to gain some traction. So yeah, there's a lot of worthwhile shows. And dependent on when you're looking at doing that, I think Mile High is in April. So
mm.
you could potentially time that with a TAC event, depending
Ah,
on how much time you have and where you want to go. So yep.
nice. So, for those who might not know who you are, can you just give everybody a little blurb about who you are and what you do for Hoyt?
Yeah. So again, like Josh said, my name is Evan Williams. I am part of the marketing team here at Hoyt Archery. Um, Long and the short of it, events. I do a lot of our technical communication work between engineering and marketing, just making sure that the consumer language is there and conveying what the engineers are trying to accomplish with their designs and the language that they're coming up with. I do a lot of all of the hunting pro staff side of everything here. And then all of our shows, all of our events, working with all of the media and media personalities, from reviews and getting product where it needs to go, and doing a lot of the coordination between partner giveaways and things like that. So lots of little micro hats under the
Yeah,
big umbrella.
yeah,
So
that's awesome. And have you always worked for Hoyt, or did you work with another company first? Or
within the industry at the manufacturer level, I've only been here. September is going to make 10 years for me.
oh,
Prior to that, I spent 10 years working at a bow shop in Colorado Springs. So got my teeth cut at the pro shop level, learning how to wrench on bows and be more of that consumer interaction piece. So I personally really like being on the road with the TAC events, or going to Vegas or Reading, or a lot of the shooting events where our consumer base is getting much more educated, and so they're very, very deeply diving into a lot of the technical aspects. And that's why I really love having the conversations with our consumer base, and this technology versus that, and the benefits of this versus that. And I can really geek out on it. So
yeah, my first bow that I ever bought was a Hoyt. I got into archery early, like around 7, but didn't actually get into hunting till I was in my 30s. So I bought a Hoyt Helix Ultra in 2019. Loved it. It's fantastic. Jumped around to a couple other companies, and then I was down at TAC last year in Pennsylvania. Ran into you on the practice range. I don't expect you to remember, but I was there with a couple guys, and I remember
there's four of you guys, right?
Yeah, there's 4 of us. I heard your
Yep.
voice, and I was like, we heard him on the way down here because we listened to one of the Hoyt podcasts.
Yep. And
So
it's funny that that you mentioned that specifically. There was 3 different events this summer where I was talking to guys, and they all froze up, and it's like, you're on the podcast. And it's like,
you're
so
that guy from that place.
yep. And I do get that quite a bit. So either I have a face for radio, or whatever that is. But
No,
so
I think we were talking about quivers because you had the
mhm.
we were rocking the Kifaru ones, and you had the
I had
Kuiu quiver.
I
Yeah.
had the Kuiu. Yep.
Mhm.
Yep. So I'll run. So I run a 2-piece setup on my bow, so I always have it on there. And so the way I rig it out for TAC events is I have the 3 arrows in my quiver that would be there after that first one gets pulled to take a shot on an animal. And they never come out of my quiver for the entire TAC event, because that's how I balanced my bow. That's how I tuned my bow. So yeah, running that Kuiu hip quiver allows me to have the spare arrows with me.
Mhm,
So
mhm. Yeah, so right after we talked to you, I went over to the Hoyt booth. So it had been, I don't know, 4 years, 5 years since I'd, because I'm right-handed, but I'm left eye dominant, so I shoot left, and normally none of the stores
yep.
stock left-handed bows. So, one of your guys was like, "Oh, hey, do you wanna try them out?" I was like, "Sure, and do you have any lefties?" They're like, "Yep." So they took the RX-8 and the, Alpha X, they set it all up, 30-inch draw, here you go, and I drew it back, and I remember thinking to myself, "What did you guys do? Holy cow, these are nothing like what
big
I was used to." Big
Big
changes.
change from that Helix, 100%, and, um, we saw big changes when we went from the cam and a half system to the HBX or the Hoyt binary system. Not only in performance, but in draw cycle, in tunability, in the noise reduction and the harmonics, like a significant reduction in vibration and noise. And what that really told us is that we were really, really good at cutting noise and vibration out because of the straight up testing numbers from cam and a half to the HBX. So as you've seen the progression of HBX, you've also seen less and less harmonic dampening built into our bows because it's not needed.
Not needed, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, this is the 4th iteration of the HBX, I think. Yeah,
Yep.
generation
Yep.
4, yeah.
Yep. So the first one was HBX, then we had the HBX Pro. Last year was the Exact, and then this year's our Gen 4. So
Nice. And
yep.
there's two back walls to choose from with this one?
Yeah, so the unique thing with the Gen 4 is we've kind of combined a couple different aspects from what the Exact gave us in quarter-inch draw length adjustments, 3 different let-off options in the back wall feel, and then what the Spectre Cam on the target side gives us, in the smoothest of draw cycle, the alignment, and a lot of the technical aspects of the cam from a customization. So with the Gen 4, we went from a 3 mod system to a 5 mod system. So we're condensing that range even more so that every single module has better performance across the range. In years past, if you were on that border where, if I'm shooting a short axle bow and my number 2 mod is going to break or stop at 28 inches and I'm 28 and a half and I want to stay in a short axle bow, I'm potentially leaving 13 to 15 feet per second of speed and performance on the board because I'm going from the top of the number 2 module position to the bottom of the number 3.
Mhm.
So by condensing 3 mods and making them 5, each mod has, so the number 1 is going to give you a full inch, and then each of the subsequent above it, so the 2, the 3, the 4, and the 5 module, all give you 3/4 of an inch. So there's only 4 positions in each of those modules because you get quarter-inch adjustments.
Right.
So when you make that change from a 28 to a 28 and a half or 28 even to a 28 and a quarter, you're only losing 2 to 4 feet per second instead of 13 to 15. So you can still get that smoother draw cycle on that bottom end, but you're not leaving as much speed and efficiency and performance on the table.
Right, yeah,
So
like, I was talking to Sarah Gamache on here, and I
mhm,
was saying, it must be beneficial for, you know and she was agreeing with me, people with shorter draw lengths or maybe a lower, they're getting way more, out of their, like you said, out of the with the module system. I mean, the stores might not like it very much because now they got more stuff to keep in stock, but
yep,
for the shooter, it's so much more, it's better for the people who want to maximize their efficiency at a shorter draw length.
yep,
So I think that's wicked. That's amazing.
yep. And there's always a fine line of that, right? If you go back to some of the original cam and a half days when we went to a replacement module system, you had 3 different base cams. Each base cam 1, 2, and 3 had 5 different modules. So you not only had the 3 modules to worry about, or the 3 cams, but you had your 5 modules. So you had 15 different modules that you had to stock to cover the entire draw length range of a bow. Well, now you don't have to worry about changing strings and cables and limbs and cams. You have 5 mods that can take you from, on the short axle from 25 all the way to 30 inches. So yeah, I can understand where dealers coming from, and again, I've been there. But 5 mods to worry about to take me the entire 5 inches
Mhm.
of draw length range versus 15 is a vast improvement. Um, what we didn't do on the Gen 4 is we didn't even go smaller. So on the target side, we have a module for every 1/2 inch draw length
Oh.
that then gives you plus or minus a quarter. So there's overlap at every end. Do you want to be a 1/4 inch on the top side or a 1/4 inch on the bottom side? Because maybe I want to play another 1/4 inch longer. So I want to go to a 29 and maybe start at 28 3/4 versus start at 28 1/2 and go up to 28 3/4. Like, like on the target side, it's much more complex from the module component side of it, where we're going to try and put as much of that together on the hunting side so that dealers don't have to go, geez, I'm stocking 20 different modules to cover, 5
Mhm.
inches of draw length range. So,
So does a lot of the technology get quote unquote tested in the target world first before making its way to the hunting side, or does that
I,
always?
it's not always the case. A lot of it, because of our target cycle, most of our target cycle is a 2 or 3 year cycle on products. So as we're testing a lot of that that's going to be coming to the industry or the market 2 and 3 years down the road, there's a lot of things that can learn that we can now either take a certain test and apply that to the hunting side, or hey, we figured this little thing out with mods or with a cam design on the hunting side and go that direction. Or the 1/4 inch draw length came from the target side as well. And so there's a lot of cross pollination between hunting and target both directions.
Mhm.
But the 1/4 inch draw length adjustments and shortening that draw length range all did kind of migrate over from where we were headed on the target side.
Okay. And has it always been a new bow every year, or did that start at a certain point? Do you I
Um,
couldn't I
as
couldn't
as
think back that far.
honestly, as long as I've been in the industry, so I mean, going back to 2000, 2001 with bows I've worked on and for in the shop. It is, every manufacturer is releasing new bows every single year. On the hunting side, it's going to be every single year. Target lines can live a little bit longer. If you look at some cycles, ours tend to be 2 to 3. Some other competing manufacturers might go towards the 5 year side. Um, that allows them to focus more on the hunting because that's where they want to put more of their technology. And then every 5th year, dump all that into a target bow. So between target models, it gives you a bigger jump in engineering technology and availability of things.
Mhm.
So, but yeah,
Yeah,
on the hunting side, it's unfortunately that's kind of, if you want to get down to it, it's kind of one of the quote unquote downsides of our industry is, we're turning product continuously. We have 3 different engineering teams in house. One of them is our mechanical maintenance team that's in charge of all of the design, the building, the programming, and everything of all of our machines that run all the different parts of our factory and facility. We have an R&D team that's testing new products, new technology, new materials and builds and processes. And then our production team, they hand a product from R&D and they get 1 year to work on it. As soon as they're done with their project, it is released to production and to marketing for us to go on, and then
right.
they're immediately starting to work on the next year's project. So they only might spend 8 to 10 months working on a new bow before, like, yep, my part is done. It's on to the next thing, and then okay, the next year, this is my priority list of where we want to go. So
Mhm.
we start working on another project, and then as we start to get consumer and dealer feedback on product that was already released, they might be making tweaks here and there to product that's going to be coming out next year.
Yeah, it's gotta be I don't know how they do it, but it's gotta be frustrating, like, you
Hmm.
put everything into this one bow, you're like, "That one was amazing," and I'm sure they're all amazing, right? They all make little adjustments throughout the year, but
Hmm.
to think, "Oh, it's too bad that didn't have another year to, you know,
Yep.
to
Yep.
to
Yep.
stay in the market, because then it's like, on to the next one, right?
Yeah, and we'd you know personally, I'd love to have a bow on the hunting side that lasted for 2 years, because you can really get behind it and do a
Mhm.
lot of marketing and spend more time with it, right? Like it can be very, very not annoying, but aggravating
Mhm.
when you get a bow in early August or even right before September, and I'm trying to put that bow together and go hunt with it for my September elk seasons, and I'm going to hunt with that through September and the fall. And that's it's a pre-production bow, so that's the new bow that's going to be coming out, and you run with that through the spring season, and you put a whole tack season into it, and you're like, oh yeah, this sucker's a tack driver, I can't wait
Child.
for the season. And then they're like, oh, by the way,
Here's a new one.
we're going to have the new ones, here you go. and
No.
and and so this year, like
Yeah.
when the bows came through, I was in attendance at 10 out of the 12 tacks for Hoyt last year,
Wow.
and I couldn't take a new bow with me and start getting it
Mhm.
ready for my fall season because it wasn't on the market. And
Yep.
so, we had two tack events in August, and I'm running my Alpha 33, knowing that my 2025 bow is sitting in my office, built and ready to go hunting. And it's just like I can't show anybody, and I can't shoot this, and I don't get the time at home right now to dope a sight in and do
Mhm.
everything I want to get ready for it. And yeah, it can be fun and frustrating at the same time. You know,
Yeah.
the most memorable hunt I have was a buck that jumped the fence on us in Kansas, came from private and jumped right in front of us. We decoyed him onto public and shot him. And the arrow that shot him was the 19th arrow that I had shot through the entire bow. I got it a day and a half before I left on that hunt. They're like, "Oh, yeah, you're going to Kansas. Here, you know, go do something with this." I'm like, "Okay." And it's like, "Okay, put it on a draw board, get things settled in real quick, and then run it through paper. Yep, that's good enough. Get a couple marks, and okay, let's go do this." So,
Wow. Jeez. That's crazy. So now, obviously, don't tell me if you can't, but I'm assuming I'd love to be a fly on the wall in some of these meetings, like the engineering meetings and stuff. Are there things that are constantly like ideas that get spitballed? You're like, that's good. You guys work on that. That's going to take like 5 or 6 years. You guys work on that. Is that kind of how it plays out? And then you kind of know where you're going to go for next year, and maybe something's ready to get put on it, but maybe it's not. And then is that sort of how it works?
yeah, and the engineering team is always looking forward. They want to be ahead of technology and ahead of kind of where the industry and the market's going. So they're always looking at possible projects 1 year, 3 years, 5 years out, and kind of driving in a general direction. Um, but the fun thing and what's awesome to watch is their ability to pivot mid-cycle and go, hey, we might have thought we wanted to do this, but this is the feedback we're getting, or this is kind of what we're seeing in what's going on. Let's take this way and chase this instead of this. And maybe a project gets pulled off completely, maybe it just gets slid to the back burner because something else is taking priority.
Mm.
So it's their ability to be versatile and changing with the state of the industry and what consumers are really looking for. Because for a long time it was all get the mass weights way down. When I bought my first bow, I was a senior in college, and it was all about lightweight. And so you have manufacturers who are building bows at 3.9 pounds on a mass weight for aluminum at the time. They were getting 314 feet per second, and other manufacturers that were hitting 330. But to do that, because of the torque and all the tension and everything that was induced with that to cut noise and vibration, it's 4.6 pounds.
Mm.
And so you got this company going at this company, and yeah, we're light, well, we're fast, and you just have these competing ideologies, and the industry starts tracking towards the mass weight side. So guess what? Okay, boom, here comes carbon.
Mm. Mhm.
So now we have a new user competing, and so okay, well, let's go after speed. And so now it becomes okay, mass weight for speed, and it's just this like 10 to 12-year cycle of what the industry is after. We're after lightweight, then we're after speed, now we're after noise and vibration profile, then we're going to be after lightweight again, then we're going to go after speed. And it's this really cool cyclical cycle to see, especially from the inside.
Yeah, and I think now we're kind of sitting on like shooter comfort. and performance and maybe not so much about the speed and about, speed is always a thing, but like you said, sometimes it scales back. The pendulum swings one
hmm
way from the other. Do you
Yep.
think 80 pounds is the new 70? Is that the way things are going, do you think? Or have we reached that point yet?
Sorry, my audio cut out. Say that again. I heard the
Is
80 pounds.
Do you think 80 is the new 70 for draw weight? I remember 60 was always the max, and then it
Yep.
became 70, and then it was like, are you sure this is 70? Because it feels like 60, and then it's kind of
I definitely think that there's an upward trend in the 80-pound market. So much that this year we introduced a 75-pound
Ooh.
because there seems like there was a lot of guys that really, really were impressed that the 80 felt the way it did. But in my mind, well, if it's late November or December or January, and I'm in a tree stand or I'm in a ground blind and I'm hunting on a food plot in Iowa and I've got 13 inches of snow on the ground, do I want to try and pull an 80-pound bow when I've got my target buck after 4 months in front of me at 23 yards? No, but I can do 75 really, really
No,
easily.
right.
So I mean, that again, that caused us to pivot and offer a whole new SKU at 75 pounds for everything, because we had a lot of dealers asking for it because the consumers were. I think there's definitely a push because of where we've come in the user feedback and the user experience that you know our bows are drawing so much smoother, and I do say ours as not just Hoyt's but the industry, right? The way the bows are drawing now is not like the same way it used to draw even 10 years ago.
Hmm.
There is a noticeable difference where I can pull 80, 83, 84 pounds, and that's like I used to pull like 67, 68, sub 70 pounds. So I'm getting more speed, I'm getting more efficiency, I'm getting more energy. That translates again to more kinetic energy. I can shoot a bigger broadhead. I can get better pass throughs. I've got the ability to shoot a little bit longer with lethal energy. So yeah, let's do it. Let's bump my weight up from 70 to 75. So I do think you're going to start seeing a little bit more of that. Um, and as those draw cycles continue to remain a little bit smoother, I don't think, especially the direction that you're seeing a lot of guys go from the fitness standpoint. I see a lot of guys that are starting to protect their shoulders more. They're doing more
Yeah.
stuff in the gym to stay healthier because they want to do this for longer in their life. So they're recognizing now, like, hey, if I want to continue to shoot a vertical bow, I I need to do some shoulder rehab and prehab and stay healthy and be a little bit more active. And the way they're pulling, why not?
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's for sure. Um, are bourbon and wilderness the two favorites colors?
Um, I would say on the solid side, blackout, then our tombstone, which is the gray,
Oh,
then the
that's nice.
wilderness, then the
Yeah.
bourbon. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. They look very nice.
So
So which are you bouncing between the two? The AX2 and the RX9, or do you
no,
gravitating?
I'm more of an aluminum guy. So I'm
Yeah.
shooting the AX232. I like a slightly longer axle to axle. Just sits better with my anchor and my head position. And then I am also more accustomed to, because of my shot style, I've a much more aggressive shot. So when I get too light in my mass weight, I get a lot of pin float.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
I noticed a couple years ago on my carbons that I was having to add so much extra weight that by the time I got the balance and the total mass weight where I was comfortable and shooting it really well, I literally was at the riser weight of an aluminum or heavier. And so it just made a little bit more sense to me from again, from an energy and efficiency standpoint where my draw length fell, along with my shot style and wanting to feel that heavier mass weight. The aluminums were just right up my alley.
Mm,
So I'll play with a carbon here and there if they ask me to, but yeah, when I get my choice, I go aluminum. So
yeah. Yeah. Um, what kind of an arrow setup are you shooting this year?
I'm running a 4 mil, or sorry, I switched this year. I went to a 5 mil, the ultralight Easton Axis.
Okay.
Um, I've got the full 75 brass hit insert in that with the collar. So that gives me another, I think, 17 grains for a 300 spine. And then I just run a standard 100 grain broadhead. So I'm running about 187 or 190 grains up front. My finished arrow weight comes in at about 455, 457 grains. And then I pull on my AX2 this year, I'm at 81 and a half pounds, and 28 and a half inch draw. I'm shooting like, I think I'm about 306 or 307 with almost a 460 grain arrow.
Okay.
So,
And do you
so
side with fixed blade, mechanical? Do you flip flop?
I shoot mechanical. Again, for me, it's an accuracy thing, especially at distance.
Mhm.
When I'm spotting and stalking, or when I'm at home and I'm trying to, stay on the ground and pursue and be active with the decoy, whether it's whitetail or mule deer. I want the ability that if I have a follow up shot, or if the only opportunity I have is at some kind of distance, I want to reduce the surface area and the potential planing or drifting that head is going to give me. So, and I started shooting the evolutions,
Okay.
hide specifically 2 years ago, and I I have not shot a better broadhead from the standpoint of accuracy and performance. The hide has got like a 5/8 or a slightly larger 3/4 inch cut front bleeder style blade, and it has a 2 inch expandable on the 90-degree axis. It's an over the top style, but it's designed to fully open on the inside of the hide, so between the hide and the ribs. And dude, I mean, I've shot antelope, black bear, turkey, moose, whitetail, and an elk with it, multiple elk with it, and have yet to have any issues with performance.
Yeah.
So even on a moose, right? Like, pumped one through him at 70 yards, and we never found that arrow. So no issues whatsoever.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. I always stayed away from mechanicals when I started because you hear the odd person say, "Oh, they don't open," or "I had a bad experience," and then you worry, well, what happens if that happens to me, and then I lose the animal that I'm trying to get. But I was experimenting with them this year, and I had a bunch of them that I shot, and it's just like that is gone. That's in the rear view mirror. Like that was maybe a thing years ago, but
Hmm. Yep.
not so much anymore.
Yep. And a couple years ago, I mean, 100% down the fixed blade path. I had found a broadhead out of Pennsylvania that they don't make anymore, or that company doesn't make anymore. And I'll tell you what, at 100 yards, I couldn't tell a difference between that broadhead and a field point. And so when I can shoot almost an inch and a half, is an inch and 3/8 fixed blade broadhead at 100 yards with the same point of impact, yeah, absolutely. I'll do it because I'm cutting right away. I'm not losing any kinetic energy. And I know I'm going to be disrupting everything once I make impact. And once that company was sold, um, and then that broadhead was tweaked a little bit, I started looking for something new, and have just really found that for the amount of time and effort and tuning I put into my setups, that the expandable is 100% the way to go.
And did
So,
you guys make any changes to your factory strings this year?
we did. So it's now under the Hoyt brand. It's called Wireworks. We have changed our proprietary building and kind of how some things are set up with the machines. So it's all migrated from Fuse over to the Hoyt side. And we've got a new string production manager, and he's been working in conjunction with our production manager on the floor back there to really kind of tweak the machines, change a couple things in that building process to increase their quality even beyond where they've been the last couple of years.
And the is it 1500 dry fires they go through?
Yep. So, and the 1500 dry fires is designed for the riser. um, last year we changed from 3/16 axles to 1/4 inch axles. um, and again, I do not dry fire your bow.
No,
Let us
yeah, yeah.
let us do it. It's under safe testing environment.
That's
And when we made the change from the 3/16 to the 1/4 inch axles, in years past, every X amount of shots, we would replace strings, we'd replace cams, bearings, and axles just to continue that test, because those weren't the components that were being tested. That not in that dry fire test.
right.
Um, we did test the axles, the 1/4 inchers, last year when we made the switch, and a pair of 1/4 inch axles survived the entire 1,500 dry fires without flexing or bending.
Wow.
So super impressed with that change. Um, limbs do 1,000 dry fires. The riser is tested for 1,500. And then once those components pass that portion of the safety test, then they get built. And now we go on to the 1 million cycles. And that's where we're going to test the axles, the bearings, the cams, and that whole boat as a system. At 1 million cycles, and it literally is a machine that runs 24/7, 365. You
Whoa.
plug a bow in, there's a couple attachments, you close all the safety doors, and you hit go, and it just cycles that bow.
Wow.
And it is the max draw length for, so the dry fire test is the max energy load on any model that we are designing. So
Okay.
a high line doesn't get tested at 70 pounds 30-inch draw, because it goes to 34 inches and 70 pounds. So
Mhm.
we test a high line at 34 inches and just over 70 pounds, because that's potentially where someone is going to be shooting it at. Same with an AX2 29. Okay. We offer that at an 80-pound limb to 30 inches. So that's where it gets tested, is the max capacity that a user is going to have that at, because
Right.
that's going to be your max energy storage. That's going to be, under any circumstance where, we don't get a knock on all the way, or we have a cracked knock, or we forget to knock an arrow. If a D-loop breaks, whatever that situation is, under any kind of user or mechanical fault or error, if this happens, that's what we're going to test it at.
Wow. That's amazing. I didn't know that part of it. I knew the 1,500 part, but I didn't know the million. So
Yep.
yeah, that's awesome.
Yep. So
So
and at any part, like if you could have successfully completed 1,499 dry fires, and if it hits that 1,500 and we go inspect it and we notice a micro stress fracture or something, okay, that riser does not suffice in the design. We go back to the drawings, we rework it, we recut it, retest it. It doesn't pass to the next part of that testing and safety standard protocol until it passes this stage. And then it has to pass this stage before we take it here. And once it passes here, we can take it to the next one. So it has to go. So you might get through 17 different versions of a riser before you even get to cycle testing. Because
mhm,
if it doesn't pass dry fire, it doesn't
doesn't
advance.
move on.
We know it isn't meeting our safety and testing parameters. So there's no point in taking it any farther. Go back in, redesign, recut, retest.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, it's everybody I talk to who either has owned a Hoyt, shot a Hoyt, they all say the same thing. They're so strong. The risers are so strong. You could almost use it as another tool. Not that we recommend you do that, but you know,
Yep.
they're
And
they
and again, like we said, it's done under, safe testing parameters. I've seen bows dry fired and be fine. I've seen them dry fired first time and they erupt. What isn't taken into account is individual and user pressures and contacts. So depending on how you climb into a grip, if you're at a show or if you're at an event and you grab a bow and you go to yard it back with your fingers, depending on how you're in there and torquing and twisting, you might be taking the
you
string and your cable and basically doing this. So if it slips, if your string has been cranked this because your fingers and the cam's over here, it's not going to track correctly. It's probably coming out of the track.
mhm,
Now, that doesn't mean it's going to cause damage. It may not. It could, but again, we're doing all this testing out of a hooter shooter and out of a controlled environment where there is no induced torque. Everything is in a straight line. So we can just, again, hook it up, attach everything, turn the machine on, and let it go.
yeah. and put somebody in a chair to watch.
Yep.
we'll
And
be
that's
back in a few
yep.
hours.
We've got 2 engineering techs in that machine, and it's a safety room that has its own complete enclosed door, and each machine has got safety plexiglass on it, and so they can go in there and literally you'll walk in there and you'll be talking, you just hear boom, 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 and that's the dry fire test, and it's just running. You can look in the glass door and yep, we're good. And same with the cycle. The cycle still.
Mm. I think I lost the audio there.
Yep.
Oh, there we go. We lost your audio there for a minute.
That figures. If it does, just like give me a thumbs up or do something.
Okay.
So because every once in a while, for whatever reason, this cord will cut out. So
Okay.
and I can reconnect and unmute myself.
So you had one hell of a season last year. You came up to Canada a little bit. Do you want to go through that and share your amazing experience?
Well,
Let's start at the beginning.
So about 10 days before I left for Vermont for the TAC event up there, it was like one of 3 days the entire month I was in my office, and my boss came to me and said, "Hey, we've got an opportunity. You'd have to leave the Pennsylvania TAC off of this road trip a day early and go up and meet one of our media film crews that we partner with, Canada in the Rough, the Beasley Boys, and they have got a spot for you to go do a bear hunt with them." He goes, "All you got to do is, you'll cover your taxidermy and the tags and all that, but I mean, it'll be part of the trip. Do you want to go?"
I'm already in the truck.
And I was like, "Well, I've always been curious about bear hunting. I've never gotten to do it. I grew up in Kansas, Colorado, even elk hunting. I'd only seen a couple here and there, and Colorado doesn't allow baiting. And there's no spring season. So it was something that was new and exciting to me. So I was like, "Well, yeah, absolutely. Like, I'm not going to pass up an opportunity to go do something, experience something I haven't before." So I completely repack to go to Vermont because now I'm flying into Connecticut, driving up to Vermont, working an event, driving over to PA, staying with a buddy for 3 days, picking up my engineering team, then driving over to the Seven Springs TAC event, working for 3 days, then having them drop me off at the airport so they can go back and work the last day. And then I'm flying to Toronto the next morning and then driving 7 or 8 hours up in a bear camp. So I had almost a 3-week road trip by the time it was all said and done.
Wow.
That had to involve show gear and hunting stuff, and got up there and met Keith and Mike and all the boys, and got into camp and had the outfit video of this is how to age a bear, this is how to size them, and they had a couple stands out, but they didn't have any cameras out. And I had been awake for about 50 hours by the time we got into camp.
Oh.
And Keith's like, "Hey, just go to bed. Don't even worry about breakfast in the morning. Don't set an alarm. Just rest. We're not going to go out until, maybe 2:00. Like, this is like late whitetail hunting where there's nothing going on in the morning. It's going to be evening sits. So just relax on Monday, on day one." So I think I woke up about 12:30 or almost 1:00. I was just wrecked and got up and had lunch and got gear together and shot a little bit with Keith out in the front little drive section off the main cook tent. And he goes, "Plan is to go in. We'll drop you off about 2:30, and then we got to drive up the road and go to my site." He goes, "We went out this morning, put some cameras out. We didn't put one in the area that you're going to because they saw a bear when they went to go rebait your site late that morning. And they said he was a good bear. Now, that's all I've gotten. I don't have any information. He was crossing the road, so we don't have any kind of marks or any way to physically gauge size. But they said that there is a good bear in the area."
Mhm.
Okay. So we go in, they drop us off. It's about a 300-yard hike off the road down through the boreal forest up into the stand. And when they went to go rebait that site that morning, they had taken a weed whacker and just kind of cleaned up a lot of the undergrowth. And apparently that's an attractant, that between that smell and the bait smell, because we got in the stand, got everything hung up. I looked down at Mike. Mike was running camera for me because he's filmed pretty much every single bear kill they've done in the last 10 years and knows how to size them and pass or no pass. And so I looked down at him, and the wind was shifty, and I had taken my ozonics unit with me, and I had a wind coming from my right to my left. And so I had the ozonics on the downwind side, and then all of a sudden it just switched. So I remember reaching up, and I turned it and kind of resituated it, reached down, checked the wind, looked up, and I came right back to center, and I looked off to my right on the downwind side, and this joker is standing 10 yards from the tree on the trail we were just on. 40 minutes. Timestamp on the camera was 43 minutes from when we climbed up in the stand till Mike, there's a bear right there. And just a big old pumpkin head, had a crater right down the middle. I was like, ooh. The one thing I was told by one of my engineers, when you're bear hunting, you look down at their skull and you see a crease, that's a big bear.
You shoot that bear.
And so I immediately went, Mike, big bear, 10 yards on the right. And as I'm doing this, I'm already reaching and grabbing the bow. Bear comes all the way in, comes 4 feet from the base of the tree, looks up at us, puts his nose back down, and goes straight into the bait, sits down like a black lab, and then just whomp.
Yep.
And I was like, he doesn't care. Like, he's not worried about another bear coming in and running him off. And because of him laying down on the ground, I'm like, okay, put it up. He sits back up. And I had asked the outfitter when we left, I said, are you running 30-gallon drums? Are you running 50s? Like what size barrel am I looking at?
Mm-hmm.
He goes, we're actually running 40s. I'm like, okay, well, I've never looked at a 40, but I've seen a 30 and I've seen a 50. So I'm assuming, it's going to be in this range. And when he sits up and he's trying to get into the top of the barrel, the top of the barrel is like over his head, and the second ring up is like barely at his throat. And I'm like, dude, this sucker's way smaller than I think. Like, I don't even know why I grabbed my bow. Like, it must have just been the way the sun and the shade was hitting him as he was coming in. So I just grabbed my camera, taking a bunch of pictures, and Mike is filming, and bear gets up and walks around and starts going up on the trees because they've got grease and they've got chocolate frosting on the bait side and on the trees. And dude, he starts moving around, and he goes to like try to eat the bark of one of the trees where they've smeared chocolate frosting. And it literally looks like a snub-nosed revolver, like just nothing of a snout. And I'm like, Mike,
yeah,
like this bear, like I've never seen a bear this close, but if I had to tell you right now, like I'm putting him at like 220, 225. Like I think he's bigger than I think he is. And Mike very casually, and if you've ever filmed your own hunts like me, like you always use a camera arm. If you have a cameraman, I've never seen one use a bow arm. So Mike has his camera, and it's on like a neck strap, and it's hanging from a bow hook. So it's free floating. So instead of working and trying to maneuver a camera arm, he just has it hooked right above him. And so he balances it and just looks up and goes, if we take this footage back to camp tonight and show them, and we don't shoot this bear, I think I'm going to be in big trouble with Keith.
Yeah, they're gonna be mad.
and he goes, I don't want to pressure you to do anything you don't want to do. I said, but I think this bear is fooling both of us. And I was like, I think based on his demeanor and just laying down in here and seeing the crease and the nose, like those are checking all the boxes that video said last night is a mature bear. And he goes, I would tell you to shoot him. That's all I need to hear. Here we go.
That's right.
So I grab my bow, hook up, get ready, and he moves from the tree cluster that he's at behind the barrel. And there's another tree, and the barrel's at 16 yards. This other tree is about 2 yards back. And as he passes from this cluster of trees to the single one behind the barrel, when he walks behind the barrel, he's like 6-8 inches above the barrel with his back. And I'm like,
whoa.
where did that come from? And goes both front paws up and is starting to eat more chocolate frosting up. And I come to full draw, settle my pin, click. And one thing that the outfitter was very leery with bow hunters, he goes, you guys always shoot them too far forward, like come back off that front shoulder.
Right.
And I'm like, well, how far back? Because Keith is telling me just shoot him like a whitetail, shoot him like an elk, just behind the front shoulder, wherever you feel you would shoot a big game animal, shoot him. But I've heard multiple times like mid body height and mid body front to back, like literally put crosshairs in the middle and you're going to be fine.
Mm-hmm.
So when he reached up, his onside leg to me was up farther. And so I was like, well, the pocket is right there. So I put it right in the pocket, hit the click in my hinge, and then I dropped it about 6 inches. And when the shot broke, he reached around and actually opened up more.
Oh.
So I ended up hitting him probably about 10 inches behind that front shoulder. And I mean, immediately in my mind is like, oh, crap, I got a wounded bear now. And he comes down off the tree very gingerly, turns 90 degrees, and basically just like speed waddles out of that area. And it was probably about 20 yards to the edge of the real thick stuff. We were in a pretty nice green opening in the canopy. And so I'm trying to watch, and I see some brushes rustling, and I can kind of see him moving, and it stops. And then about 2 to 3 minutes later, everything starts going crazy again. And I looked down at Mike and I was like, I said, I think I can see him. And so we're both trying to look with binos, and it's so dark in that. It's like, we're just going to let him sit. So, Mike turns the camera on me, and we kind of walked through things, and, texted Keith, and we're like, so, and he goes, there's no way you just shot a bear. He goes, you did not kill one your first night, less than an hour. Like, there's no way. And I'm like, well, I don't know that he's dead. But I do have an arrow in one. He goes, there's no way. And Mike's like, yeah.
True story.
and he goes, Keith, I'm pretty sure he's dead less than 25 yards from the stand. And so he's like, okay, well, the outfitter's not going to want you to go. He's going to want you to stay there, and we'll come in and get you. I said, but we have an hour of light left. Like, if he is dead, like, for recovery purposes, like, I'm going to sneak out of this tree. I'm going to go look at my arrow and look at the blood and see what we're dealing with. Because I'd rather know now and be able to go, hey, Mike, we're good. He's dead. Let's get this in and at least get some good B-roll. And I had my camera gear with me, and I was like, you guys don't have any DSLR stuff, and I've got my DSLR with me, so I want pictures. And so we sneak down and real gingerly go up to where he was standing. I look down, and I find my arrow, and it is just absolutely covered. And I was like, okay, that's a good sign. And there's blood immediately. And everybody has told me, if you hit a bear, even if it's good, a lot of times you don't get good blood.
Mm-hmm.
They either have a lot of fat on them, depending on when you're shooting them and how the winter was, right? Depending on how much fat source they had to pull for hibernation. But their hide is still so very thick that a lot of times everything just clogs up. I look down, and there's blood everywhere. And I was like, Mike, this looks pretty good to me. And he goes, just follow it for a little bit, keep your eyes open and look ahead and just listen.
Mm-hmm.
And so I go about 6 yards, and there's a big V that comes out of this clearing that we're in and goes into the boreal forest. And there's on the right side of the tree trunk is just covered in blood. And I'm like, well, that's a good sign. And I poke my
Yep. Through a can of paint.
And I poke my head through, and he's laying right there about 5 yards in. I was like, oh, I said, he's dead. And he goes, you okay? I was like, yep. I said, but he's laying in an angle towards me and he was belly down like this. And so when I came around and through that tree and I'm 5 yards away looking at him, I said, yeah, we're good.
Just want to take a quick break to talk to you about a couple of things that I've been using that I think might benefit you. One is this Numa Outdoors gear. This is in their Kaza OV pattern, which is great whitetail pattern when you're up in a tree in the fall and late season. They also have a Kaza pattern which has more green in it, which is good for spring through to the fall. Numa has given me a code to give to you of Caribou Media 20, which will save you 20% at checkout. Another product here that I've been using for years now is the Bulldog targets. This is a Canadian made target. They're made in Manitoba. They have a lifetime warranty. I've used that warranty twice now on a couple of my larger targets that are outside. It's very simple, very easy. These targets are 2-finger removal every single time, which is incredible. Field point only target. Bulldog's been gracious enough to give me a 20% discount code to give to you at checkout. Use code BD20-Caribou-Media. That'll save you 20% on these awesome targets. Now back to the show.
But yeah, Keith and some of the guys thought he was going to go maybe just a hair over 20 inches on his skull. Had absolutely zero fat on him and was 280 pounds when we hoisted him up. And I was just
nice. That'll do.
So, and it was first night, like just everything, the way it went down. We got 15 minutes of footage of him, and by the time we shot and he had expired, we were still under an hour into the hunt. And Keith had a successful hunt the next night on a really, really good bear. Another like 265-pound. And then the rest of the trip was, again, for me, was trying to get content and run around with the outfitter and ask a lot of questions and probably get in the way a little bit. But there was a pair of brothers from Michigan that were up there. And then there was 2 other gentlemen that were in camp hunting from Ohio. And so it was literally like we're pulling and moving cameras, trying to figure out where bears are at and trying to move them and get them on bears. And one of the brothers killed one the last light in the middle of a rainstorm, the last night that we were in there, and it didn't go anywhere, and we're able to recover that. And we lost one other bear with one of the gentlemen from Ohio. And so, I mean, we had a great trip. So
nice. That's awesome.
Just incredible. Went from that and finished off the tack season. And then like literally the last tack event was in Kentucky during the opening weekend for Utah's hunt. So, but it was
nice.
It was crazy. It was a good fall from there. Managed to pull my over-the-counter general season Utah elk tag, and then came to work for about a week and took off and went back to Alberta and
Nice.
had a moose tag in my pocket and a bear tag and a wolf tag, and my wife went up with me and she had a moose tag, and I was able to fill the tag, and unfortunately she wasn't. But
was that her bucket list hunt?
That was her. That was the one. We've been September this year is going to be 21 years together. And since we started dating, the first turkey hunt I ever took her on, she kind of got hooked on a little bit warmer weather, active, the vocal aspect of all that. And she's just not real big on the whitetail thing. She doesn't like sitting there. She doesn't like being cold. And she's always told me, like, I think moose would be really, really fun. And I was finally able to find the right people in the right situation and get her up there for that moose hunt. And unfortunately she didn't kill and I did. And the bull I ended up killing is one that she and Heather, one of the friends that we'd went up with, they had seen him 2 days prior.
Oh.
And so we killed the bull that we had actually seen, and they weren't able to harvest. And I shot a second black bear on that trip, spot and stock. So from never having hunted black bears to getting a fall and a spring bear, just had an incredible fall season. I mean, took every high possible into November in my Kansas tag, and That for me was going to be more of a my job is to put everybody else on animals. I've got a buddy from Colorado and his wife that hunt with us. I had a really good buddy that I used to room with at all the events that Hoyt would do, and we went together. He was doing all of our film and video work. Taylor Larson drew that tag with us this year, and then my sister-in-law and niece were coming down, so I was trying to run cameras and move stands and get everything set up. And um, my buddy's wife shot a upper 160s. I think he went 167 or 168 as a 9-point. And then shot him on November 3rd. And literally, I had went into that property that night, and I had walked it with her husband because he had put some cameras out and they weren't working. So we went down and we get to one spot, and it's a big horseshoe type meadow, and I had taken my buck out of there last year. And I look under my stand and I was like, I thought you said there was no scrapes or rubs anywhere on the property when you walked it 2 weeks ago. And he goes, there wasn't a single one. And I'm like, 1, 2, and I just turned a circle and I counted 7
Liar.
rubs. And I was like,
Wow.
this is, for whatever reason, this turns on right around Halloween.
Yeah.
And so I put a camera out, and I told him, I was like, really, like, it's 1 o'clock. Like, by the time we get back to the truck and kind of get everything, packed away, it's going to be about 1:30. I said, I think you need to call Emily when we get to the truck and have her come out here. I think she needs to sit the stand tonight. And so Emily got out there about 2:30, hikes down in there, and 2 hours later shoots almost 170-inch 9-point at 18 yards. And
Wow.
just a great buck that we had no history with, like absolutely zero. And we've been hunting this property for 15 years. It's a permission piece. And then Taylor shows up, and I had him on another property. It was a new one for us. I had a real nice funnel pinch coming off of a cut and baled cornfield right down pinching into the river. And I was like, there's like 3 heavy trails that come through here. I haven't seen a lot of scrape or rubbing activity. I don't think a lot of deer are living here. But I think they're traveling from the neighbors here over to this spot, and they have to come through here to do it. And so got him in a tree, and he sees like he called it a mega giant. And the picture I have, you can't even see how big this deer is, because literally he's standing on the downside of a Russian olive tree, and you can't tell what's the rack and what's the tree.
Oh,
And
wow.
he's like, he goes, I can't tell you if he's a straight typical 10, if he's a typical 12. I can't tell you if he's a 12 with cheaters. He goes, there is something like he's just got stuff. And I was like, okay, well, I've got a couple sheds around the house, and was pulling sheds, and okay, judging based on this, and look at this, and by everything that he has given me, looking at different antlers, I mean, this is 185-inch typical.
Wow.
And the wind changed for the rest of his hunt that blew right into where this buck went and where he came from. And I was like, well, I got another spot. It's good. It's one of those, like, you never know what's going to show up. But you need to sit like 4 days in order to get an opportunity, because it's very, very random. I said, but the wind is going to be good for it for the rest of your hunt. So we can just kind of move you around in this meadow based on what you're seeing. And so he goes in, and the first day I have him in the same stand that my buddy's wife killed her buck in the week prior. I go check out another piece of walk-in ground, and he texts me and goes, there's a really big typical north of me, and he screenshots on Onyx and circles where the buck is at. And I'm like, okay, can you get down and can you go 10 feet into the dry creek bottom in front of you and just take that all the way up? There's a ladder stand about 200 yards north of you. You cannot miss it if you're in that dry wash. And he goes, I got a yearling buck, little spike bedded at 20 yards. He goes, I can't get out of the tree. I'm like, okay, well, if that buck leaves, go down, go north 200 yards. There's another ladder stand right there. Climb up into that one. and that spike stayed there all day.
Of course.
And so he finally, even 30 minutes into, dark, he finally got out and got the buck off of him. And next day I was like, okay, this is last full day we have to hunt. Wind is going to be doing what we want it to, but there's a big rain and thunderstorm coming in. So I'm going to put you up in this ladder stand. You can use that as protection from the rain and the wind. I'm going to go just across the range about 20 yards. I'll saddle up into a tree over there. I can see out the backside, but it gives me a really good videoing opportunity for you and that entire meadow that you've been in. And literally where you said that buck is at is going to be 60 yards from where your stand is at. And so we climb up in there, we get all set up, and about 30 minutes after legal light, here comes the rain. And it is miserable. It is blowing 30 miles an hour. The rain is just pelting us. And he's tucked in against this big cottonwood that is, 2 feet wider than either one of his shoulders. And I'm out in the open just taking it. And I kind of look off to my north and I just see this little white flick. And I'm like, well, I know there's no trash or junk up in that area. Pull my binos up. There's a buck bedded 60 yards from me. And I'm like, I look over to him and I kind of give him the, hey, there's a buck sleeping right here. And so we wait for 3 hours and the rain finally stops. And I'm glassing trying to, see this buck, and he's repositioned a couple times. And I put my binos back down. And I look over to Taylor, and we've got a decoy 15 yards in front of Taylor in this meadow. And there is 2 forkies circling his decoy right underneath him. And I'm like, oh no.
Oh no.
Reach into my pack, grab the camera, start videoing them, get it set up on the camera arm. I'm like, okay. And so I'm just watching the screen and watching him, and they're circling. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, hey, they're under him. That's good. Live decoys is perfect. And I look up because I've been grunting and rattling and snort wheezing at this deer, and he's not doing anything in the rain. As soon as that rain cut off and those 2 bucks showed up, I looked up, and that buck is out of his bed and he is coming. And he stops right on the edge of the meadow and just spends about a full minute just destroying this tree. And Taylor doesn't see him at first. And like, I'm trying to like wave and point, and I'm 25 yards from where Taylor's at, and I'm in the wide open looking at him. And I'm like, dude, like, buck right here. And he's just watching these 2 forkies. And he finally hears it, and he just kind of like, you can see him tense up, and he just real slowly moves his head, and he just kind of jolts, and he looks back at me. He's like, right here. And I was like, I'm already filming, dude. Like,
I'm way ahead of you, bro.
I know where he's at.
Yeah.
And so like he grabs his bow all excited, and about 15 seconds after he grabs his bow, this buck stops, picks his head up, pins his ears back, and just walks straight out in the middle of this meadow, just posturing like a gorilla coming in. And he gets to 17 yards, and he came in the perfect spot because the canopy of the trees from my angle, if he'd have been 4 more yards deeper in the meadow, all I would have seen is legs. Like, I'd have covered belly up and everything, but he was right on the edge of the bank. I could see his entire rack, everything just perfect, crystal clear. And 2 yards from the decoy, he stops and turns broadside and just goes. Taylor was already at full draw. I already had him center frame and just flat.
Wow.
And he lurches. The 2 forkies look up like, what is going on?
What's going on?
He runs off up the middle, and Taylor looks back at me, big old saucer eyes, like, I can't believe this just happened. And that buck goes up the bottom, and the 2 little forkies end up kind of taking off and going to the south. And we walk up on a almost 140-inch 3.5-year-old 8-point that, again, same meadow, and we had never seen him. I have no clue what buck it is. I've got no history with him on any camera on that property ever. And just nice, thick, heavy mass. I was like, dude, that's a great buck. And I was like, guess what? I have it all on film, except for him in his bed at 60 yards because of how thick it was. And, that's the second whitetail he's ever killed, the 3rd whitetail hunt he's ever been on.
Wow.
And his first hunt was with me, and it didn't go well. And so, like, to me, that was kind of a redemption hunt. because we got to do it together. I got to be there and experience it with him, and I got to film it. And then, he goes home, and I have another day to hunt, and was looking for a specific buck and never found him. And I left my cameras out, and I had a feeder on mom and dad's. They've got a house up on the hill, and down off the bottom, they've got about 12-yard alfalfa field. And right on the edge of the alfalfa, I put a blind up so that my daughter could fill a doe tag. And I put a feeder in front of it about 14 and a half yards. And the week before Thanksgiving, I was talking to my boss, and we're trying to decide on the schedule for the next week. And in the middle of our conversation, my phone goes off, and it's my camera app. And I'm just like,
I gotta go.
I was like, something just daylight. He goes, what? I was like, my app just went off. And I pulled out my phone. I was like, I'm not going to be here next week. He's like, what? I was like, nope. I was like, you may as well just mark me as absent because I'm taking off tonight. He's like, what? And I turned my phone around, and there's 190-inch non-typical on my camera. And I'm like, I got to go. I was like, I don't know who this is. I don't know where he came from. Like, I think where he's living, but this is the first time I've ever seen him. And I hunted that buck for Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I hunted him for 5 days, and he did not daylight until Thanksgiving night. And we're in the living room making Thanksgiving dinner plates, and I look out the kitchen window, and there's 7 does on the.
Oh wow!
And I'm like, I look at Lizzie, and I was like, Lizzie, there's 7 does on the feeder right now. And she goes, what? And she turns and looks out the window, and she just like is holding her plate, and she's like, and I was like,
turkey deer, turkey deer.
And we had never had deer daylighting all season on that. Like, it's Thanksgiving, and that's the first time we'd seen anything daylight on it. And I was like, eat quick. We'll watch it because we can't go blow them out. And about 45 minutes later, all of them kind of, jaunted off, went over the fence into the pasture, and then down into a big, long cedar draw we've got. And I was like, they're only going to go in about 100 yards. They're going to bed down. They're going to come out tonight, and they're going to come right up that same bank, and they're going to come back in, hit the feeder, and then they're going to go south. I said, so get ready. We need to change. We need to get out there. And so we get in there, and like right at 5 o'clock, I'm like, okay, just grab your bow and get ready. We've got like 30 minutes of legal light left. I was like, they're going to be in here within the next 20 minutes. So just get ready. So she grabs her bow, and I'm looking out the back and just kind of checking around. And she goes, Dad, there's a deer. And she's looking south. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. I was like, well, is it a buck, or is it, can you see? She goes, I just see legs. And I was like, okay. And I kind of leaned out, and I could see its breath coming from behind a cedar tree. And I was like, okay, great spot. I was like, are you comfortable? Like get situated now. It's about 50 yards out. I said, it'll probably come up the fence line in about 30, 35 yards. It'll jump and then come in. So you've got to be really, really still when it gets in that field, because you're close to that window. Just don't move. Mm-hmm. She's like, okay. And she kind of readjusts and gets situated, and takes her release, and she hooks up to her bow, and she's sitting just like this. And she's got her head tilted down. So she's got her mask way up high and just minimizing all that. And I'm like, that's my girl.
Well trained.
and then literally she's like this, and she goes,
oh,
and just starts shaking. And I'm like, what is it? She goes, Dad, it's him. And I was like, what do you mean it's him? She goes, it's Howard. And I was like, what? And so I kind of lean up and out, and all I see crossing the fence is one side of his rack. And I'm like, oh. And she goes, you need to grab your bow. And I was like, well, get yours down into your lap very carefully. So I grab my bow, and I get ready. And I'm thinking he's going to jump 30 or 35 yards out, cross the fence into the alfalfa, because the wind is coming from the west, blowing east. So it's actually blowing across the alfalfa and going up the hill. So he's on the upwind side of where those does are at. I'm like, he's going to come across. He's going to go on the east side. He's going to get downwind of that feeder to scent check it for any doe that's coming in late. And I'm going to have all this time to shoot. He's going to go behind the feeder. I can go to full draw because he's going to be blind. He's going to step across. His head's going to be down, scent checking. He'll come up, do a whiff, boom, he's going to die right there. And he keeps coming up the fence and coming and coming and coming. And I'm like, what is going on? I lean up and I've got just a little tiny slit on the side of my window, and my blind is tied off to the corner post. So I'm 3 feet from the fence. He's on the other side of the fence right next to the blind, and all I can see is his breath coming up and out of his nostrils. And I'm like, dude, this joker is like 5 feet from me right now.
Nobody move.
And like I'm watching and I'm hooked up, just looking, and all of a sudden I see his head drop and the antlers. I'm like, okay, coming to full draw. He comes over the fence, takes a couple stutter steps, and he's about 11 yards was my guess. And I'm at full draw, and I have one of the rods of the blind and the window going right through his entire body. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, okay, nope, we got this. And so I just kind of leaned over to my left, and I got my sight to clear that window. I was like, if my sight clears, my broadhead's going to clear. I was like, yep, there he is. And literally, as I'm doing that, I'm leaning towards my daughter. And so she's sitting here up against the front of the window, and now she's not going back away. She's leaning into the window, and she leaned her head out the window.
Oh,
and
no.
that buck, like, he jumped and he's already looking at us. And when she went forward, he went, nope, turns, flags, and he doesn't sprint, but he starts doing that kind of wobble trot. And I'm like, oh no, come back over to the right window, plant my peg, Texas heart shot. Mrap, mrap, mrap. And the third one, he stops and he turns broadside and looks at me, and I'm like, oh, open alfalfa. He's 30 yards. I hit the click. I bear down. I'm like, I should shoot him for 35 just in case. Give him 5 more yards. And I physically remember taking my 30 pin and going right there. Flat. And the shot breaks, dude. His belly hit the dirt. And he was 12 feet from the fence. He didn't roll and run away. He went straight down, belly hit the dirt, and he went 12 feet forward over a 5-strand barbed wire fence, clotheslines himself, rolled at least twice, catches his feet, goes down into this bottom and gone. And I'm like, I know I hit him. I saw the impact. It's high. So I sat there and she starts shaking. I was like, yep, that's the adrenaline rush. Like, that's what you want. And then I start shaking.
Yeah.
And she goes, let's go get him. I was like, that's a high shot. We probably aren't going to recover this deer tonight. We're going to give it 20 more minutes. We'll still have a little bit of legal light. We'll go look at the arrow because I can see the arrow in the alfalfa field. And so we waited, got up. I grabbed the arrow and I was like, ooh, like barely any color. Like, I've got hide, I've got a little bit of color to it, but it looks more meaty. And so I go over to the fence and I kind of look down, and it's just some real small drops about the size of a dime. And I was like, hey, we're gonna back out. It's dark enough under there. I don't want to go in with a headlamp. A high shot, if he doesn't go the 350 yards south to the neighbors, he's gonna stay in that draw tonight. He's gonna tuck up under a cedar tree, and hopefully the broadhead did the work I needed it to do with a bad shot that will find him expired. So we go home. Of course, I don't sleep at all.
Nope.
And the next morning I get up, have some breakfast, dad's getting ready, and all the kids want to go. So I'm running around trying to find warm clothes because it's about 10 degrees before the wind chill. And I get the 3 older kids all bundled up, and we go down and come in from the south side. And we came on the south fence because where I shot him, I'm 350 yards from the neighbors to the south. So my hope was, if he's still alive and we come in from the south, that I'll be able to see from the bottom up under the cedars and either find a dead deer, or if we bump him, he's got to go north, but he's got to go over a half mile north to get off of our ground, which wounded deer didn't go anywhere that night. He's not going to go that far. So we have a better opportunity of recovering this deer. So I take my daughter down in the bottom. I was going to have her walk the east side of the bank on the alfalfa side, and then dad had the 2 boys. He's going to walk the west bank. I get down in the bottom, start looking, and Lizzie goes, "Dad, I got a lot of blood up here." And I'm like, where? And I look up and she goes, there and there and there. And I walked up and I looked, and yep, there's the blood trail. I can see it going down into the bottom, which means he came up here, and right there is where he crossed onto the neighbor.
Oh no.
So I called Dad and I was like, "Hey," I said, "You got Jeff's number?" And he goes, "Yeah." I said, "Better call him." I said, "We got blood, and it's on Jeff's. I've got blood on Jeff's." He said, "Okay." So called Jeff, gave us permission to cross and pursue. So we follow him, and he goes down in that bottom, makes a cut to the west or to the east, goes up the bank, gets into a fresh planted alfalfa field. So it was a summer planting. So you're talking 3 to 4 inch shoots, and it's just bare dirt. And I'm like, well, there's his tracks. Followed his tracks all the way across an alfalfa field onto the next neighbor, and in a grass crossing, I find one drop of blood half the size of a dime.
Mm.
Call that neighbor. He gives us permission to pursue.
Oh,
And that's the last drop. We spent another 2 hours looking for him. We went just over a half mile. And I was like, you know what? He's gonna live. Like, it was just
yeah.
it's a superficial wound. And he showed up 2.5 weeks later on this same camera.
No way.
And I got to see both angles. The first angle is him showing me his exit side, and there's not a mark on him. He comes in, he eats at the feeder, he turns, checks a doe. Now is the entrance side, and I can put my finger, yep, that's right where I hit him. And so I think what happened, surmising from those two side images, is I know now that he was 31.6 yards from my chair to him. So I was about 4 yards hot. He dropped, I hit high, and I think because of where I hit him, shooting a 2-blade expandable, I think that entered horizontally, right where the ribs start to roll up into the vertebrae. So coming in horizontally as he's dropping, hit at that angle, and I think I got a glance out through the back straps, and that's why there's no exit wound apparent on that side. So showed up 2.5 weeks after I shot him, survived the rifle season. He showed up again. So the last cell cam picture I had before I turned off service was December 30th, with 1 day left in season, and he was staying on us, and no one else was bow hunting it. So, cross my fingers that that saga will continue.
That's an amazing story. Wow.
So,
was there a time, I remember, I think you were talking about having to borrow somebody's deep freezer when you were in Canada? Was that a little bit of hospitality?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, there are just some of the most genuinely awesome and amazing hearted people in this world.
Yeah.
I had a Grizzly 450 cooler. So the big one they make, it basically goes edge to edge of the bed of my truck and sticks about 4 to 6 inches above it. And I had a bunch of ice in there, but shot the black bear on the third day, recovered him the next morning, got him all broken down, and we didn't have a working freezer in camp, and we didn't have enough ice to freeze the cape. And so our concern was, with the amount of time we had left to hunt and not having sufficient ice, that by the time we got him back to a taxidermist, he was going to be warm again, and we were going to start losing hair.
Right.
So we had a forest crew, or a royal lands crew that was coming in doing some backfilling on some burned out areas of that wilderness area. And so they had brought in a semi with a backhoe and a bulldozer, and then the foreman was coming out, and so he was running trails on 4-wheelers, kind of coordinating everything. And so we finished skinning out this black bear, and we go over to the foreman. We're like, we got a black bear and we don't have a working freezer. And we're afraid, because of the lack of ice that we have, that we can't get him frozen and get him taken care of properly. He goes, oh, no problem. If you take this main road, you take that, for us, right? 4 miles down.
Mhm.
Big Y, stay to the right. It's going to go down about another 7 miles. You'll hit the only blacktop. Once you hit blacktop, make a left. You're going to take that over into town. There's a general store in there, and you can either get more ice or, maybe he'll, hold it for you, because we had a big trash bag it was in. But this is also on a Sunday.
Mm.
So I go rolling into town, and as I go through town, school's over here and all the residential's on this side, and there's the general store. There's the Presbyterian church. Here's the fire station. And it is a ghost town. I walk up to the general store, and there is a sign on the door. Ran to town to go get supplies. We'll be back. And I'm like,
Just wait longer. Yeah.
well, according to that, I still got 4 days to wait. And I'm like, oh. So I walk over to the fire station, and I'm just, hopefully someone's around. Ringing the doorbell, walking around the station, nothing. Church is completely empty. And I'm like, there was a truck when I drove into town, and it was a black Ford F-150, and it had a big Whitetail Euro skull decal in it. And
Wow.
I'm like, oh, please be a hunter.
My
So
people.
I drive over to the house, and I pull up,
Yeah.
and I parked in the street, and I'm walking up to the front door, and it's like, 2 steps up to a porch. And as I'm walking up the steps, the front door is like half open. And so I'm not trying to be quiet. And this lady comes running out of the house.
There we go.
So as I'm walking up on the porch, not trying to be quiet, this lady like rips open the door and comes running out. And I was like, hey, I don't want to alarm you. I said, I'm in hunting, and I got a weird question for you. And she's like, oh, you have the same trucks as one of our friends that lives down the road. And they told us if they had any issues because they were harvesting, that they were going to come to the house. So I'm glad you're not them and you don't have any issues. What's going on? And I was like, well, I shot a bear. And I said, but I don't have a working freezer in camp. Is there any chance that you guys potentially have a freezer or space that I could put a black bear in for 2 days? And she's like, actually, yes. She was, we have a rental property we just cleaned out yesterday because the tenant left. And so she was, I have a small chest freezer in the garage that is in working condition. I just need to plug it in. Hang on a second. She runs in the house and opens the garage door and opens up the chest freezer. We clean a couple things out. She plugs it in and kicks right up. She's like, yeah, bring it on over. I'm like,
Wow.
you have got to be kidding me right now. Like, this is awesome. So, dumped my skull and the hide and everything from the bear in a, basically a 7 cubic foot freezer, and wrote my permission piece that, my name is Evan Williams, and here's my phone, and here's my information and all my tag stuff. And, Miss Ashley is holding this for me until this date when I can come get it. And, showed up 2 days later, and she actually came out and met us when the yellow truck pulled up, and she goes, I kept checking on it. The freezer is good. Everything's frozen. And I'm like,
Oh, wow. Nice.
and then she goes, you got a moose. Cause now I got,
Oh, yeah. That's right.
like, we had a pretty successful last couple days.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And then she, got to meet her kids, and her husband was out working. And so she got to meet our whole crew and hear the story. And yeah, just can't say enough about, again, especially coming from a small town, just the people and the attitude that is different when you are in and from a small town. So
Yeah. 100%. That's amazing. Well, that's awesome. Thank you very much for taking the time. Let everybody know how they can find you and Hoyt and everything else.
yeah, so Hoyt socials, if you're into the target side, Instagram is at Hoyt Target Archery, or at Hoyt Target, and then Hoyt Bow Hunting is Hoyt Bow Hunting. I've actually got 2 pages that we run. My personal is Evan_R_Williams. And then more of my content and a lot of the focused hunting that my partner and I do are found at Huntlete. So HUNTLETE. So
Nice. And the workouts you've been doing, have you Have you always been
Big.
doing that? Doing that?
uh, um, no. Well, I've always been into the fitness side of things. I was like a 4 or 5 sport athlete in high school.
Right.
And then I had a Division I athletic scholarship for competitive Olympic style rifle shooting.
Ah,
So yeah, I graduated high school at like 155 pounds. I graduated college with what we were doing. I was 168 pounds, way more on like the long and distance cardio type stuff for the sport. And just kind of got into the mindset of I need to be a little bit bigger after my first elk hunt when the pack I was trying to put on was probably as big as I was.
yeah. Yeah.
And met a buddy who is now my hunting partner, Zach Bailiff, and he was a soccer player in college and got his degree in exercise and sports science. And so we just really kind of started bouncing around, and he kind of programmed some workouts and I'd play with them, and hey, this is how my body's responding, and just went back and forth. And when we moved to Utah, I didn't have anybody to work out with, and it was very hard to go to the global gym, so the Golds or the Vossas and or anything like
Yeah.
that, and get a good workout in by yourself. And one of the ladies that was in our neighborhood, her oldest son and my daughter were in the same class, and she had been trying to do the same thing that I was, and she came up one day and she was, hey, there's a gym up in Layton, which is about a 20-25 minute drive from us. And they do free classes on Saturdays. And it's like group partner workouts. Do you guys want to come up with me and my husband and go do this? Well, it was a CrossFit class.
Hmm.
And I loved it because here is, you know, 50 years age gap in people in this class from different strengths and different skill sets and different athletic or non-athletic backgrounds, and literally everybody is doing the same type workout based on your skill level and your strength and your ability. And I'm like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
And 4 weeks later my wife bought me a membership, and about 6 months after that I got introduced to a gentleman by the name of Dave Castro. And for those of you that aren't in the CrossFit space or know that name, Dave Castro was a Navy SEAL. And when he transitioned to civilian life, he started working for CrossFit. And his job was to program the CrossFit games.
Hmm.
And so, Dave and I got to talking, and he called me up one day and said, hey, there's a level 1 coaching certification class that's just south of you. We just had somebody cancel for that class. Do you want to get your coding certification? I'm like, oh, absolutely. Like, just tell me what I got to do. And he goes, I've already got a hold of my assistant. Your name is on the roster. Just show up. Um, Adrian is going to be your flow master who kind of controls the flow of the course. And Adrian had been the main programmer at my gym, so I already knew him. He goes,
Hmm.
just go find Adrian. He will completely take care of you, get everything squared away. You're good to go. And so got my coaching certification, and then
Wow.
literally just ran with it. Drank the Kool-Aid, if you want to say. Just really love the functional training because of the hunting and the hiking and just the aspects of what we do, and the different loads and balances and everything that we've got to put our bodies through when we're hunting as hard and as far as we do sometimes. So,
Yeah. It's
and
all interconnected, right?
yep, yep. And I really love getting to work with, all kinds of different people. From, one lady I got to work with was 57 years old, mother of 9, was not an athlete in high school or growing up and anything. And she just one day realized, with 9 kids of her own and grandkids coming, that she wanted to be able to enjoy life with her grandkids and things like that. And couldn't do a lunge, couldn't do an air squat with body weight. And, after a year of working with her, she's back squatting 100 pounds and she's doing full lunges. And
Wow.
just getting to see people come from all kinds of different backgrounds, and I can't do that, or I've never tried that, and then seeing them accomplish something that legitimately never thought that they could do. Like that is so gratifying to me as a coach. And
That's awesome.
I've found a nice little network of people to, bounce workouts off of, and have those little friendly competitions. Like, okay, well, what are you doing today? Okay, well, I'll do that. Well, what was your time? Well, I did this. Well, how much weight did you move? Okay, well, and it's a really good way to push yourself without having someone right there doing it with you all the time.
Yeah, that's awesome. Wicked. Well, enjoy the rest of your afternoon. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, sir.
And we'll talk to you soon. Hopefully we'll run into you on the practice range again at TAC.
Yep, looking forward to it. I'm pretty sure I will be at PA again this year to see you guys.
All right, I'll find you.
I'll be looking for you. All right, Josh.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
Yep, see ya.